Nightmare of Decay is a love letter to old school survival horror titles, namely Resident Evil and Silent Hill. It's great value, it's only £4 or your regional equivalent, but it's actually packed with tons of content to enjoy. It released recently on Steam from developer Checkmatey, and I gotta hand it to him. It's been regularly updated to address balancing issues, adding support for other languages, and you just get the sense that the developers are really listening to player feedback. There's been a massive rise in old school shooters or boomer shooters, and it's nice to see a survival horror game join the mix. Story-wise, it's nothing groundbreaking, but it ties the gameplay together quite nicely. There's been a series of disappearances with people complaining about hallucinations, and before you know it, you find yourself in the nightmare. You're greeted by a strangely unfriendly talking cat. I'd imagine that if you tried to pet this cat, it would let you do so for about 5 seconds before it bit you. But your main goal is to escape the nightmare before the monsters can get you. The games this pays homage to are well known for their tank controls, which some people can't stand. Personally, I've got no issue with them. I mean, I grew up playing OG Resident Evil, Tomb Raider, Silent Hill, but Nightmare of Decay mixes the old school with something a bit newer. The game's first person, and the controls are just what you expect for an FPS game. This makes the game feel faster paced, and it lets the player focus more on the atmosphere and gameplay. Suppressing tab brings up your inventory, where you can assign weapons to hotkeys, so you don't need to keep entering the menu to switch weapons. And there's sections for each type of item which you pick up, like health, weapons, key items, documents, etc. You're not scrolling a long list looking for what you need. As for the gameplay, it's really fun. Your time's going to be split between puzzle solving, combat, exploring. So if you're looking to have your mind taxed, I'm afraid you're not going to find it here. Puzzles are pretty simple and they're pretty much lifted from other games. Mixing chemicals, moving a suit of armor. Most of your time's going to be spent in combat, so it's great that they nailed it. There's a good range of weapons, some surprising, and there's even more to play with in the extra modes once you finish the game, but I'll talk about that more later. The game uses an accuracy system like in the Resident Evil 2 remake. So if you stand still briefly, your crosshairs will narrow and your shot will land where you're aiming. If you fire before that, it might go a little wider where you're pointing. It might not sound like much, but it really adds to the tension when there's enemies around you and you're running low on ammo, hoping to get a critical hit. The weapons feel weighty, and let me just take a moment to appreciate the headshots. Moving on to graphics, you can tell a lot of effort's been put into making the game's locations. Little details added to make the world feel more lived in, which I feel is a problem lots of smaller indie titles suffer with. 3D models look nice, and the gore system looks great when you're exploding heads or shotgunning a zombie in half. There's different reloading animations for all the weapons, as well as cutscenes to convey info, and it just adds up to make the game feel really polished. The game even has an FOV slider, which puts some AAA games to shame, not naming any names. However, the soundscape is my favourite part. The game knows when to keep quiet and when to play music that doesn't vie for your attention. Ambient sounds in the manor are really nice, and the sounds of nearby enemies make you really anxious for what's around the next corner. Now, I'm only showing footage from the first part of the game because discovering stuff is part of the game. There's a number of references to other games, and I'm really doing you a disservice if I just spoil it. The game is quite short. I completed it in about 2 hours and 14 minutes on my first playthrough. There is a hard mode, so if you desire, you can make it a bit tougher for yourself. But once you complete the game, more game modes are unlocked. There's a procedurally generated dungeon escape and a horde mode. These modes introduce new weapons to try out, and add playtime to the game. All in all, this is a pretty great package. I can't wait to see what Checkmate you do next, but in the meantime, if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe to be notified when I upload next. I've been Drax, see you next time.